The Pacific in early 1942 was an ocean on fire. In only 6 months, the Japanese Empire had swept across Asia and the Pacific, creating a domain that stretched from Burma to the edges of the South Pacific. Singapore had fallen, the Philippines were in agony, and the Allies seemed unable to stop the tide. Pearl Harbor had crippled America's battleship fleet. What remained were carriers, vulnerable, experimental, yet suddenly the only weapons that could stand between Japan and complete dominance. Now Japan set its eyes on Port Moresby. Australia trembled on the edge of invasion. If Port Moresby fell, the continent would be cut off, vulnerable to blockade and bombing. Families in Sydney and Melbourne dug air raid shelters in their gardens, convinced Japanese troops would soon march through their streets. Newspapers screamed of Fortress Australia. Panic ran deep. Rumors spoke of submarines lurking off the coast, of paratroopers waiting to drop from the skies. Every convoy that sailed south carried both supplies and the fragile hope of survival. For the Japanese High Command, the Coral Sea was only one step in a vast design. They dreamed of isolating Australia, cutting its lifeline to America, and forcing the Allies to sue for peace. But for the United States, holding that line was everything. Admiral Nimitz dispatched Task Force 17, built around Yorktown and Lexington. Behind those decks lay the defense of an entire continent. Even then, few Americans believed 2 carriers could halt the tide. Officers confessed in letters home that they might not return. Life aboard the carriers was a study in dread. Below decks, sailors slept beside torpedoes, the air thick with gasoline fumes. Heat pressed in like a physical weight. Sweat dripped constantly onto steel floors. Men played cards in silence, cigarettes burning down between calloused fingers. Some wrote letters home, blotting ink with trembling hands. Chaplains made endless rounds, offering words few wanted to hear. At night, the ocean seemed unnaturally quiet, as if it too waited for the storm. On May 3rd, Japanese troops seized Tulagi. At dawn the next day, planes from Yorktown struck back. Dive bombers fell like hawks, their bombs slamming into destroyers and supply ships. Explosions tore sailors apart. Flaming oil cascaded into the sea. Survivors leapt overboard only to be swallowed by burning slicks. Pilots later said the harbor reeked of cooked flesh. For the first time in the Pacific, Japan bled, but it was only the beginning. The hunt began in earnest. Japanese carriers prowled south, Americans crept north. For days, scout planes clawed across the skies, searching for shadows. On the carriers, tension was unbearable. Mechanics worked shirtless in suffocating hangars, drenched in sweat and gasoline fumes. Pilots tucked last letters into flight jackets they might never take off again. Sailors sharpened knives, loaded magazines, and waited for the order to fight. May 7th brought the first clash. American scouts found the light carrier Shoho. What followed was slaughter. Torpedoes ripped her belly open. Bombs shattered her decks into firestorms. Flames swallowed crews refueling planes. Pilots still strapped in cockpits roasted alive as fire poured through ruptured fuel lines. Eyewitnesses saw men run ablaze across the deck before pitching into the ocean, where burning oil finished them. Within minutes, she rolled over and sank, spewing bodies into the surf. "Scratch one flat top," a pilot radioed back. But vengeance came swift. Japanese aircraft descended on the Americans. Waves of torpedo bombers screamed low, while dive bombers plummeted from the sun. Anti-aircraft fire filled the sky with steel, but too many broke through. Explosions gutted compartments, firestorms ripped through decks, and men were hurled into bulkheads like broken dolls. Corpses lay charred in passageways, limbs severed by shrapnel. Survivors swore the air itself smelled of blood and burned paint, a stench that clung to clothes for days. May 8th dawned blood red. Both fleets launched everything. The skies filled with swarms of Wildcats and Zeros, Devastators and Kates, engines howling. The Japanese found Lexington. Torpedoes slammed into her flank, flooding compartments. Bombs cratered her deck, igniting fuel. One by one, fires merged into infernos. Planes exploded where they sat, tearing sailors apart in showers of steel and bone. In hangars below, Men clawed at sealed doors as smoke suffocated them. Ammunition cooked off in chain reactions, blasting bodies into fragments. Hours passed in agony. Captain Sherman finally ordered abandon ship. Survivors leapt into seas slick with fuel, clutching comrades blackened beyond recognition. Some floated alive beside severed limbs, their faces melted by fire. Others screamed as sharks closed in, drawn by the blood of hundreds. Sailors later admitted they could not sleep for years, haunted by the sound of friends burning alive and the smell of oil mixed with human fat. Yet American bombers struck back. Dive bombers fell on Shokaku, tearing her flight deck into molten ruin. Bomb blasts shredded aircraft waiting to launch, killing crews instantly. Fire raged across her length. She staggered, crippled. Her sister Zuikaku survived, but had lost most of her air wing. Without planes, both carriers were useless. Japan's spearhead had been broken, though the sea still boiled with wreckage and corpses. The aftermath was horror unending. Oil slicks burned into the night, lighting corpses that drifted face down. Survivors clung to wreckage, their cries echoing across waves that reeked of gasoline and blood. Sharks feasted openly. Pilots who ditched into rafts stared at the bloated dead floating around them. Some men drifted unconscious, their skin blistered and peeling, until rescue came. Others simply sank, bubbles marking their last breath. When the guns fell silent, the reckoning came. Japan had lost Shoho, crippled Shokaku, and bled hundreds of irreplaceable airmen. The United States lost Lexington, dozens of planes, and brave crews. On paper, it was a draw, but strategically, Japan failed. The Port Moresby invasion was canceled. Australia was saved. In Sydney, church bells rang, children danced in the streets, and newspapers declared the battle that saved a continent. For the Japanese, it was the first bitter check. Diaries recovered from survivors spoke of comrades burning in cockpits, of men screaming in the oil-soaked waves. Some wrote of shame, unable to forgive themselves for leaving shipmates trapped under collapsing steel. Others cursed the ocean itself, calling it a grave that would never give back the dead. Japanese officers knew the loss of veteran air crews was a wound that could not heal quickly. The empire's momentum had faltered. For Americans, memory froze in May 1942. The burning of Lexington, the endless wreckage, the ocean thick with blood and smoke. Survivors said the Coral Sea never left them. They smelled it in dreams, tasted it whenever smoke filled their lungs. Some described seeing shadows of burned shipmates standing at the foot of their bunks. In bars, veterans drank until dawn, trying to silence the screams they swore still echoed in their ears. The Coral Sea was not just another naval clash. It was the first great carrier battle, where ships never saw each other yet still died. It proved the future of war had changed forever. Battleships were relics. Carriers were kings. It gave the Allies something priceless: hope and time. 1 month later, that time paid at Midway, where Japan's carrier force was smashed, and the tide of the Pacific War turned for good. But for those who were there, the Coral Sea was nothing but a graveyard. Oceans of wreckage, bodies drifting under a pitiless sun, men screaming in smoke and fire. It was the place where the Pacific itself seemed to bleed, and where history shifted forever on waves blackened with oil and human ash.